know it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Zed, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Zed.
Makes me act the way I do.
I'm Dr. Erica O'Neill, and I'm joining you today from the Channel Zed studio complex. We managed to reclaim this cafe space next door to the studio so that we can hunker down a bit over the holidays. I'm not sure what went down in this space, but we cleaned it up a little and tried to make it a little less of a biohazard. Joining me today is Dr. Jason David Scott, who's organizing the tech behind the scenes. They've been in the studio this past few months. Do you have any idea what happened in this space before we cleaned it out?
Well, we were very lucky in that right next to the little space that we carved out for our Studio Zed was the site of what was probably a pretty terrible attack of zombies. You can see there's some body parts left over and some ill-begotten goods on the shelf. So I don't know what was going on here, but it's been good for us. We got the tent set up. We've got a bit of a perimeter. And I, because I can't travel home for the holidays because I'm stuck here, I'm anxious to learn a lot about, what cooking for the holidays in the midst of a global apocalypse.
Well, if you are interested in learning about cooking in the holidays during a global apocalypse, this is the episode for you. Today, we're going to be talking about feasting on the run. So this is the perfect little cafe space that we've reclaimed for that. Jason's going to be prepping some things for our feast next to us over here. So whether you're sheltering in place like we are right now, or you're on your way to the next safe house, the season for feasting is right around the corner. And whether you're going to be fighting supply chain shortages or zombie hordes to snag that last box of dehydrated stuffing, we're here to help guide you through this holiday feast. And to help with that, we hope that you brought your questions and answers, Q&As, because this season we have Eat, Pray, Run host Dr. Rob Dunn joining us, who is an expert in all things food and culture. Rob, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's great to be back on the show, Erica.
I am amazed that you had time for us today because you have released a new book called Natural History of the Future, What the Laws of Biology Tell Us About the Destiny of the Human Species. And it's the second book of the year for you because we covered Delicious, the evolution of flavor and how it made us human last April. So I'm hoping that we can combine your insight from both of these to really inform our show today.
Sounds great.
So I'll start off with a question just for you and asking about that context. Humans have come together feasting for millennia. Is there anything different about this moment in time that you see and how you see the future of these sorts of gatherings evolving?
Well, I was just thinking about that because there are some aspects of how we feast together that are basically the same as they've always been. We eat, our bodies process that food, we connect with each other physically. And so some aspects of that coming together are really ancient. But at the same time, other parts are really different. And so I think a lot of us have family members who will join us via Zoom or Skype or some other means during the holiday. And that doesn't really have much precedent. And so, how could we imagine making feasting online anything like feasting in person? What does this look like in the future? Do we eat together in the future? And so I'm really interested in those kinds of questions about the now and about the far from now.
Yeah, that ties into one of the questions that we have here is that it's not much, but at least we have Wi-Fi, so you and I can be together, even though we are on dramatically opposite sides of the country right now.
That's true. But one of the things that we know about, like when chimpanzees eat together, when they share food, that the individual that does the sharing actually gets a dose of oxytocin, which is that same hormones mothers get when they hold their babies. And so we have to ask, like, if we're sharing food virtually, if we're sitting here and both eating, do we still get that oxytocin from the sharing? Or is there something actual physical that's missing when we're not able to be together and to connect over food?
That's so true. Do you know if anyone's doing research on that, or is it just too new right now?
I don't think anybody's ever looked at humans and what happens when we share food, but the assumption would be that we're a lot like the chimps and that same thing. So if you're around a big table, but as we all know, when we're around a big table with other people, that you can have good emotions and bad emotions too. So probably there's some complexity to that
Very
biochemical
true.
topography.
So what are your plans this holiday? Are you having celebrations with folks in person, or are you going to be kind of hunkering down with just your immediate family?
We're going to go across the street to a neighbor's house. And so we'll be in person with people, but not with all our family. So we'll connect with them virtually. How about yourself, Erica?
We're having a small family get together with folks. Everyone's vaccinated, so the risk is a little bit less right now than it was in previous years. So previous years, I don't know, 1 year, 2 year. It's hard to measure time right now. But I know that it's going to be nothing like last year, which was just me and my partner. And I made a whole feast for just the two of us because I got to have those leftovers.
Well, Neil was just saying that there's something missing when we're not with other people about preparing food together, which I think is a great point. We don't talk about it very much, but that not just the moment of sharing food, but actually of creating that food. And that's a pretty uniquely human thing. You know, chimps and other apes will use tools to harvest particular food and do it together sometimes, but it's not the same as creating something together, which is this art of togetherness that seems pretty uniquely ours. But
That's
easy to
very,
lose
very
in a
true.
time like this.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really missed last year was that ability to like putter around the kitchen in real time with other people, kind of creating a feast together so that it's like a shared kind of co-creative thing. It's not just me all alone in my kitchen doing it by myself.
Yeah, and there's even that frustration of like you're in the refrigerator space, somebody else wants to be there, and you're a little bit irritated, but you're irritated together.
Exactly. The family that like kind of unites around these shared problems can grow a little stronger.
Exactly. Do we have other
So I know,
questions, Erica? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, we've got some here. One of them that we had was for you and I, we're both vegetarians. So what does a main look like for a Thanksgiving feast for us? It's the opposite of this one here from Neil, who's suggesting things that are a little bit on sort of the other side of the spectrum of that.
Yeah, so I don't eat bodies, but I think a lot about how they taste, right? So I think a lot about the taste of meat and the flavor of meat. But my main is typically vegetarian, but I'm almost always the only vegetarian, and so I end up being a sides person. So my
Gotcha.
Thanksgiving is typically a Thanksgiving of wonderful sides, but I've been doing it for so long that feels normal. What about you?
So I've heard the same from people who even aren't vegetarian, that the turkey's just kind of like an add-on that's there for the tradition of it, but it's usually kind of flavorless, bland. It's just a giant hunk of white meat or dark meat. So yeah, for me, we've got several vegetarians and vegans in the house. So we'll be doing a Wellington, usually with like walnuts, lentils, all sorts of vegetables chopped up in there around some puff pastry. But this year we're doing like a wreath, a samosa type inspired filled wreath with like
That's fun.
potatoes and peas and chickpeas. So that'll be pretty good too, with some nice chutneys on the side.
But it'll be all cooked together, or it's assembled post cooking?
Assembled post cooking around this, and then put in this like puff pastry ring that you kind of pop in the oven and it gets all toasty and warm.
Oh, that's fun. And do you crave meaty tasting vegetable things, or is that not part of your
I crave meaty
culinary
tasting
desire?
vegetable things for sure. Like it's not I like flavor. Flavor's great. I don't want to like hurt something while I'm enjoying my flavor. So I'll do like the coconut bacon crisped on top with like a little liquid smoke and some maple and stuff like that to kind of replicate those scent and flavors and real fattiness.
Somebody just said, I just lost a comment, but David, maybe it was the name, said that it's okay if you eat free range people, which, I understand. But the thing for me is, you go to the store and you find the free range people and they're packing, and it clearly says that they're free range. But do you really believe that they've been out wandering around, or are they just kept with all the other people? It's hard to know. I mean, advertising is so tricky.
Yeah. Have they just had their beaks removed so that they don't bite other humans like they do with chickens in those sort of settings? Free range chickens.
Oh, Neil asks, if you had to eat a human body part, what would it be? He says earlobe. I can't even see.
All right,
Neil's
Neil.
earlobes. Just,
nice and meaty.
I think feet. When we were writing the book Delicious, Monica Sanchez and I, we came upon this hypothesis that others have voiced that some of the megafauna, like mastodons and mammoths, had really delicious feet.
Yes.
And pig feet are really featured.
Yeah,
And
trotters.
so I think, well, what's a human trotter taste like? It intrigues me a little bit. But
Yeah, there's so much good unctuous fattiness in those. Lots of cartilage that breaks down and really would create a pretty good gravy to go with it.
Yeah, now that you describe it, I'm not interested at all.
Yeah.
We're sharing a mic. We've got, but we're sort of approaching a conundrum here. It's like, what if the world were without animals? And it's very likely that people would divide into two factions, vegans and cannibals. And so I'm imagining the post-apocalyptic story of the vegans versus the cannibals, and how that story ends up playing itself out.
How do you think that story would play out, Rob, if we had an animal-free world and it was vegans v cannibals?
It sounds rough, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think it's good for anybody. I mean, maybe it'd be a good show for a while, but it depends if they were together. I guess if the cannibals were all on one island and the vegans were on another, the cannibal island would be bad, but the vegan one would be okay.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you would winnow down that population pretty quick. End up with a bunch of vegans. So
Yes.
Let's go to this question right here with Neil. He's wondering, like, from all of your experience throughout history and time, I'm going to put it in that context since you just wrote an evolution of flavor. What's the most precious or valuable foodie item in an apocalypse to you?
I would go with salt and garlic. I think salt for preserving food. I mean, if you're trying to store food, you need a way to preserve it. You can dry it. If you have dry conditions, you can ferment it. But just being able to salt it is super useful. So salt is great. And then garlic does some of the same things to preserve food, but also to heighten flavors. And so if you had those two things, you'd be in good shape. I mean, cheese implies you've got some kind of a milk-making animal with you, unless you've got human cheese, which, yeah, I'm going there. Yeah. So
I mean, it's possible, but
I'm going to stick with salt and garlic. We're in an apocalypse, but salt and garlic for me.
I'll go salt and oil, because some sort of fat. If I can find some sort of fat, have it with me, or like find it out there, I mean, it makes everything taste a little better. You can use it as a base for a lot of stuff, and it also helps to cure things. If you put meat and fat, like rillettes or something like that, it helps to keep that kind of cured too.
Well, and Kidding Around asks, how does one feast on the run? I think that's a great question. I mean, if you think historically, or even some places today, about hunter-gatherer ancestors and modern hunter-gatherers, often when walking from place to place, people would find something they like, enjoy it with great pleasure and gusto, but somewhat quickly, and then keep moving. And so you can imagine a sort of many small feasts, each one pleasurable and some displeasing, but then you're on to the next thing very quickly. And so it would have its advantages, I think.
Yeah, right now in the studio, our feast on the run consists of all these sorts of high sodium packaged items. I'll kick it over to Jason here to describe what he has created.
Yeah, so this is trying to think of, for those of you who might be alone on the run, and to be as utilitarian as possible, I've scooped out the thing of chicken breast, but this could be turkey breast or tuna even, if it comes in a can. I've theoretically heated it up in this perhaps hot, perhaps not stove that we're working with. And then I've used the tin and I've layered it with some mashed potatoes, and then I filled the chicken back in, and then added a layer of yummy stuffing on top. And what I would do with this then is I would then take my beef gravy. This is not, by the way, for vegetarians, because it's the apocalypse. And I would put the gravy on it.
Pause. Do you just have a jar of beef gravy?
Jar of beef gravy. I mean, I wouldn't put the whole jar on, but I would sort of layer the top with a little bit of gravy, and then bake that for a while. And so you get this sort of like Thanksgiving version of shepherd's pie or something, and it's in this nice little single containers. And if you have a bunch of these, you can make them go on the run, and eat them at your will. Just be sure to heat your chicken to at least 165 degrees, which clearly this temperature is here.
I like that this suggests a new food show. It'd be like zombie abandoned houses. And you would go into a house that's abandoned because of zombies. You'd have to find which foods are available there and then make the best food. And then run. You'd have to do it very quickly. This is great.
It is, Jason. They've like created an entire feast out of just a couple boxes in a can right there. You've got your protein with the canned chicken. You've got stuffing, potatoes. We even got high sodium gravy. So if you're sweating things out on the run, you can like replenish those electrolytes really quick. So, jar of beef gravy, vital for any go bag. Didn't realize it until now.
Is totally going to pick this up. And what if there were a buzzer when the zombies were coming, and then that would mean you lost?
Yeah, the countdown. It's real high stakes.
I just missed the question.
We've got a great question here for you, and that's what does your newest book talk about, Rob?
So it's about the future of life and the extent to which, as we think about the next 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, that contrary to an Elon Musky world, that all of the basic rules of life will still apply, and that we're only going to make wise decisions about the future if we keep those rules in mind. The evolution still happens. Species still interact. We still depend on thousands of other species. And actually, one of the framing things for thinking about this book is a little bit zombie apocalypse-y, which is thinking about the International Space Station. And so if you imagine the International Space Station, it's out there in space, it's circling us, and it seems so removed, so futuristic. But the truth is that even the space station, that the astronauts on the space station depend on Earth for other species in many, many ways. They acquired their microbiomes on Earth. Their food comes from Earth. Even their feces has to be packed back to Earth to be broken down by Earth microbes. And so as we think to the future, we have to remember this connectedness. That's the main topic.
Yeah, someone might have heard a little bit of a noise in the background. I promise it's not the zombies. It's just the derelict building falling around our feet. So it's settling. Thank you. Around our feet right now. So based off of that, what are the top 3 rules of life? We're going to get deep right now.
Well, so I think the first rule of life is about our psychology, that more is always unknown than we think is unknown. And so as we look around the biological world around us, we're super powerful in many, many ways. We can make transgenic humans, transgenic pigs. We can do all kinds of things. At the same time, it's recently been estimated that there are 1 trillion species of bacteria. 30,000 of those are named. And so the first rule of life is that there's more of it. It's less understood than we tend to think. A second rule of life is just natural selection, that life continues to evolve, and whatever futuristic thing we do, that'll continue to happen. A third rule of life is that life itself is far more tolerant of extremes than we are. And so we imagine that the end of nature, and the truth is what's far closer to us in a zombie context or a real context is the end of humanity. The end of nature is not threatened whatsoever. That there are species that live on oil spills, species that live in hot springs. They tend not to be things we like to be around. But whatever we've done so far of our great human horrors, there are species that thrive from it. And so we are more limited than the rest of life. Those are 3. I don't know if that's the best 3, but yeah.
Well, we've also got Neil's 3 right here: food, shelter, and other people, maybe with some beer, some coffee. Those little luxuries in life to make you feel human and kind of celebrating in groups.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think to celebrate together where we are in this world of many species that we depend on, rather than flinging ourselves in phallic rockets into space.
So true. We have another question here asking about sort of music and this aspect of humanity, of like how we cooperate, how we can sync up with these songs around a campfire. Is that something that's allowed in the zombie apocalypse? Would it attract zombies?
I don't know. Can zombies hear? I always forget the answer to the zombie biology questions.
I don't know. We've had a lot of people on with sort of contradicting takes on that. I guess it's something that you could trial and error on your own. At your own peril, just be able to feast on the go and make sure you can pack it up real quick if it goes belly up.
Yeah, I think your singing should be in relation to your speed as a runner. If you're fast, you can sing a lot. If you're slow, I would keep it down.
Or you get the fast person to run out, go create a distraction, circle back around. You can keep feasting after that.
How many fast people do you know that are going to run out and create a distraction versus just running away?
I think that's what dogs are for in this scenario. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to all of our four-legged friends for saying that. So we've got one more question, and I wonder if you could answer this based off of some of the olfactory guests that we've had on the show before and kind of their take on that. If you remember Anne and Peter over in University of Illinois, I think it was.
Yeah. So how would you keep zombies from knowing? Well, I don't remember, Erica, what the thought was on zombie smell. Did they? What did they argue? Could the zombies smell well or no?
So one of their arguments was that, well, zombies don't eat other zombies, so they can clearly smell like cadaverine and those other sorts of scents in the world, and they know that that's not food.
Well, I mean, so the simple trick then is to ferment rather than to cook, and so going back to our first question about what vegetarians eat that is meaty, and I'm actually not attracted to meaty vegetarian food so much. But different cultures have actually converged in different places on fermented foods that are vegetarian, but that have meat-like aromas. And a subset of those produce smells that are pretty close to cadaverine and putrescine. And so some cheeses would actually probably ward off zombies. And so I think you're probably better with some fermentation than with cooking.
So we have another solution here in the studio, and that's that if zombies can smell other zombies, we make sure to keep a little bit of these parts around to mask what's happening.
Oh, look at that. That's a good tray of zombie.
I mean, it's a pretty gross tray of zombie, but so long as we keep it on the opposite side from the food that's being cooked, I think that we're going to be all right.
Can you walk us through what we're seeing there, Erica?
Yeah, so we've got, if we pan over into this area, we have a ton of bottles of different zombie bits that have been fermenting on their own. We have lots of different pieces that we've kind of collected. They're over near that door, so we're trying to keep the scents that are coming out of that real zombie-like, so that we don't have to deal with that. We've got a whole cafe setting behind us. You can see some of the boards are falling down around us.
But
and then we've got
those jars need to be open if you're trying to use them to ward off zombies.
Holes in the top of the jar.
Yeah, we got holes in the top to cut down on the evaporation.
Oh,
We want to
that's
make
good.
sure those scents last for a while.
I mean, eating good food that smells good, that has wonderful flavors, singing while you're eating and while you're with friends, making food together, it's so important and so wonderful. Is it worth the risk? I mean, to me, it just seems like you just have to live with the fact that there are going to be zombies around and enjoy your food.
Sing while you're running and feasting is Neil's solution to it, and I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'm not that coordinated. I fell running the other day without any feasting.
Well, he has an option. It's also pickles and silent disco. We can just ferment and kind of hang out together.
That's a good name for a band.
We've also got some people that say it's totally worth the risk. And I mean, I kind of agree with them. If you stop doing the things that make you human, life becomes a little bit less humane. And it's something that if you lose that sort of spark or that energy, you might lose that sort of will to keep going on and try to strive above the adversity that you got around you.
I guess a key question is, when you're putting yourself at the risk, are you putting others at risk, and do they feel the same? And so if you're with a group of people, you're all feeling risky, and you all just want to sing and eat together, that seems fine. If you're with other people who don't want to put themselves under the risk, then it's a different story. And if you're with somebody who doesn't want to put themselves at risk, but you don't like them, then it gets more complex.
I mean, that kind of boils down to the risk reward that we've faced in this entire pandemic, and how much people are willing to risk to be around others, to risk to go out into public in sort of those settings. It kind of seems like that's the same principle that applies right here. What sort of group risk do you have? What sort of pre-existing conditions or needs do you have that you need to not be out in those sorts of areas?
And who are you putting at risk?
Yeah, exactly. We've got another great question here. And that's what packaged foods are good or better for your health, because processed foods are supposed to be really bad for you. They're also really high calorie and have a lot of fat in them a lot of times, a lot of added salt. And so in like a situation like this, if you need those high caloric demands because you're going to be running from zombies in the apocalypse, that's something that's not so much at the forefront for me. I also feel like freeze-dried stuff, like I use a lot of those in backpacking meals. So if you can find stuff that's freeze-dried, it's super light, vegetables, fruits, and it's like an MRE that doesn't taste like it's a soul-sucking disaster when you try to make it with something on the run. So I would say that those are two things that I would prioritize. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are also packaged foods that aren't as processed. And so think about some kinds of kimchi that would be packed and sealed and would store for a long time, but have fewer of these additional steps that introduce other ingredients or make them more caloric, although calories in the sense is good in a zombie world. And so I think it really depends on the context. And some of the processed foods stay forever. And so if you're happy just to be full, but not pleased, then they weren't great. It's a question of how important is it to you to be pleased? Matters to me quite a lot.
Likewise, that's why we both prioritize salt, garlic, oil, those really, really delicious things that make food taste better. So I've got a great question here about the final feast menu in the Channel Zed bunker. What does your Channel Zed bunker menu look like, Rob?
Oh, right now I want a banh mi, but I just want one right now. But maybe I can't see past that. But it's some nice, slightly sour French bread and a tofu and some lemongrass. That sounds great to me right now. What about you, Erica?
Well, the final feast that we have right now is our chicken a la can of things. So we've got banh mi. Yeah, the banh mi I think wins out on that. We've got Jason. They did a great job putting together the stuffing, gravy, powdered mashed potatoes, and chicken. I mean, we used what we had because all we got is some hot water. If we had a little more at the ready, what do you think that would look like?
Well, I would say I did not use the bloody zombie teeth as we had discussed. We thought it would add some texture, but we didn't want to go there. To me, it's always curious as to what people's individual families or groups do, because everybody has sort of the same 7 or 8 standard things. But like in my family, my dad doesn't like most pies, so we always got a chocolate cream pie because that was his favorite. So to me, Thanksgiving is chocolate cream pie, whereas most people might have something else. So I'm always curious as to what people's unique sort of internal family traditions are, in addition to the turkey's cranberry stuffing and so on.
Well, I could horrify you with a Midwestern delight that's green Jell-O, cream cheese, canned pears on one half, and then purple Jell-O, blueberries, and cottage cheese on the other. But I mean, I wouldn't miss that if I'm on the run in the apocalypse and it's something that didn't make the menu. Rob, as we're signing off, what's one thing that your family makes?
Well, we have these cinnamon rolls that my grandma used to make, and we all try to make. And the secret is they require extraordinary quantities of lard. And so they're great when somebody else makes them. They're almost impossible to make yourself because you always second guess. Like, is this really the right amount? But they're delicious, and we always have them.
Well, thank you all for sharing your Mad Max menus with us, plus chocolate cream pie. And we really are thankful that you guys could all join us today and bring your questions with you. Thanks for sampling our brains. And until next time, we hope that you eat well.
I know it's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.